Hi, I'm Kalki Kekla, and I'm here once again with something special for you, a new episode of Kalki Presents My Indian Life. I think you're going to love it. We bring you amazing stories from all over India about young Indians, and we would love for you to share about it on social media. This is the video version, but you can also find the audio version by just downloading a streaming app or a podcast app and looking for My Indian Life. Thank you for being with us.
When she was a child, Archana Soreng wanted to grow up and be just like her father. Bijay Kumar Soreng was a tribal rights activist who, she says, fought to improve the lives of people in his community, an indigenous tribe called the Khariyas. When he was diagnosed with an advanced form of lung cancer, she was devastated.
This is something which I find difficult to relate it. Like, my father was not into smoking and alcohol and all of it, but still he got cancer, lung cancer.
It seemed a very cruel and unfair turn of events. Archana's family tried everything. When doctors in the eastern state of Odisha, where they lived, didn't have the answers, they took him to Mumbai, where Archana was going to university. One of the last conversations with him stayed with her.
So he always used to believe that every action which you do makes a lot of difference to people. So he said, give back to people in terms of like contributing back.
Just days later, he died at the age of 53, and it hit Archana hard.
It was very difficult phase because I was in my master's and I was also like focusing on my studies and all of this happening, which also made me realize that life is very uncertain and we just need to express ourselves to people whom we love and be with them the amount of time we can.
Archana had such a close bond with her father. Now she wanted to continue the work he'd been doing. Let me tell you a little more about him. He had been a professor of social work, and as we've heard, he was dedicated to his community, the Khariyas. The Khariya tribe is a tribal community spread across Odisha. The forests mean everything to them. For decades, they've nurtured and been nurtured by the forests around them. Archana says her father saw himself as a bridge between the tribe and the world. She says he did his bit to ensure the community was aware of their rights. He spoke to them about the policies that the government had sketched out for them. He was there to listen to their queries and answer them to the best of his knowledge. And this was who Archana aspired to be when she was young. Today, she is fighting to protect her community and the forests around her ancestral village in Odisha. But that's not all. This is the story of a young woman whose personal ambition to protect her community has blossomed into a bigger fight against climate change. Today, Archana Soreng is campaigning not just for her and her community, but, she says, for all of us. She's even advising the Secretary General of the United Nations. I'm Kalki Kekla. From the BBC World Service, this is Kalki Presents My Indian Life, the podcast about being young and Indian in the 21st century. Season 3, Episode 8, Climate Warrior. One of Archana's lasting images of her father is him on his motorbike, always headed somewhere to talk to people about the provisions of the Panchayats Act 1996, for instance, a piece of legislation that granted tribes and communities the power to govern themselves through Gram Sabhas or local governments. But her father wasn't the only activist in the family. Archana's mother, who worked as a librarian at a local school, talked to women in the Khariya community about their rights. A young Archana would often sit with her mother, listening to these discussions. And then there was her grandfather. Archana says back in the 70s, he rallied men and women from his village and the neighboring villages for a meeting.
There were multiple reasons to that which I got to know. People coming from outside and trying to, destroy the forest. Also, there is a lot of forest fire incidents happening in the region. So then he was the one who went and met with the different village leaders in the nearby areas, neighboring areas, and they were the one who formed this village level forest protection committee in the earlier days.
Archana says her grandfather even led a pledge that the entire community took. A pledge to take only as much as one needs from the forest, not more. For the Khariyas, their surroundings are an integral part of their community.
As a tribe, we are, in our worldview, we are not part of nature, but we are nature.
A typical day in Archana's ancestral village begins with brushing one's teeth with twigs from trees.
Which is called datun in our language. And now that we see, it is an alternative to plastic toothbrush which we use.
Almost everything they use in their daily life is natural or organic. The plates they eat from, for example, are made of leaves stitched together.
And these leaf plates were made by ourselves. All my aunts and grandmothers used to go to the forest, and then they used to plug these leaves in a very specific way so that, it's not pulled up. The leaves are not pulled up but plugged in a proper way. And then they used to bring this home, and then they used to stitch those leaf plates.
The community is almost entirely self-sustained. Their food is either gathered from the forest or grown in the fields nearby. They use dried cow dung cakes as fuels for their mud stoves, and any food waste is fed to the cattle. It's a beautiful, sustainable circle.
My grandfathers and my uncles used to have water bottles made out of pumpkins and bottle gourds. Because pumpkins and bottle gourds are circular in shape, it's like the pulp we used to eat as vegetables, but the outer crust was dried and used as water bottles.
In the summers, Archana and her brother would wait eagerly for her father to return from the village market and bring home a treat they loved eating: red ants. And the protein was a crucial part of their tribe's diet. It helped them get through scorching summers. While on the one hand there was this strong connection to nature and the forests, at home with her parents, the emphasis was also on Archana's school and her studies. Within the Khariya tribe, her parents were among the first generation to be educated. Before them, education was simply unaffordable and out of reach.
One thing which I felt was very strong in our family is like it was very difficult for them to access education. And they always had this strong feeling how we struggled for education. My upcoming generation should not have those problems in terms of accessing education, and also to have a decent life and livelihood.
So Archana and her brother were marched off to school. And her mother, she says, was especially particular about Archana's studies. Like study more, extra hours of study.
No, I think not extra hours of study, but also like study at least.
Right. Just go to school.
Go to school and study.
And it was because of her family's persistent effort to get the children educated that Archana was able to pursue a postgraduate degree all the way in Mumbai. But it was shortly after she started her master's that her father, her idol, her ally, her mentor, died.
I was very, very sad and disheartened, and like, because I never imagined life would be without my father, and that to very early age when we were growing up in our masters. Also, there was this element of shock because, like, the question of how, I still don't have the answer today.
Her father's sudden death made Archana realize how short time can be. She decided to document her community's practices and traditions. And she wasn't just going to hang around. She wanted to do this as soon as she could. They weren't written or documented anywhere, but had mostly been passed down orally from one generation to another. So Archana decided to make that her first mission.
I think it led me to go back to the community. Either I would have gone back to my father to learn things, but loss of him made me go back to the community like a lot of people back home.
At college, Archana was studying a subject called environmental regulation, which looks at how environmental policies are framed across the world. And in the curriculum, there was also all this material about how local communities protect the forests around them, especially in the context of climate change. But Archana felt that most of the literature was written by non-Indigenous communities. She felt that the perspectives of Indigenous tribes weren't adequately included.
was written by someone non-indigenous, which also made me realize that having the access of education, I should write about my communities by myself.
She decided that after her master's, she would become what she describes as the voice of her community. It was her way of fulfilling her father's wish, to give back, to stay true to her roots. She began with research and field visits, gathering material about crop patterns, the living conditions of the tribe, the issues that affected them. She then looked for forums where she could present her tribe's perspective. She wanted to be their representative. She believes climate change is already adversely affecting her community in Odisha, but she feels that nobody is listening.
For example, let me take my village. We grow our crops and also we access our forest-based livelihood and fruits for a living. Now, when there is cyclone, specifically during the summer season, and summer season is one of the major season for us when we sell the leaf, mahua and all other forest products we get.
Just to jump in, if you don't know what mahua is, it's a fruiting, flowering tree. Generally, tribes use parts of this tree to make medicines and to make a popular intoxicating drink.
And when we have cyclones, cyclone does not impact our region because we are not in the coastal areas, but the mere drop of rain spoils the leaf. The mere drop of rain spoils the entire forest-based livelihood and produce. So people tend to see what is happening in the coastal area, but people don't tend to see what is happening in our region.
Archana also feels anger. She says people in cities might turn up their air conditioning and not fully get the impact of climate change, but indigenous tribes like Archana's don't have that option.
We are the ones who have been living a life in a more sustainable way, but we are the ones who are most vulnerable when it comes to impacts of climate crisis because we do not have access to resources to protect ourselves. We have been resilient through our traditional knowledge and practices, but because of this frequent occurrence of impacts of climate crisis, it's been very difficult.
There is another big issue that worries Archana. She claims her community is slowly being edged out from participating in the fight against climate change. They are armed with centuries of indigenous knowledge and know the forest intimately. But, she says, her community's rights over the forest, over the land that surrounds the forest, are under threat as a result of mining projects.
We are living in the setup of forest and agriculture, but when we are evicted from that place for extractive developmental projects and others, then our land is taken away, our forest we are not able to access, then we have to shift to other places where we will not have that kind of connection of food, forest and livelihood which we used to have in our village areas. So if we really want to work towards climate action, we need to make sure that the indigenous people have their land, their forest and territories and not being evicted from their places.
Does all of this dent her optimism or her spirit? She says no.
You can't sit idle if you are angry. You need to take some action. And even if it is a small action, it will make difference. I feel speaking up is important because I'm also a researcher. I want to come up with good documentation on this as an evidence of how it is impacting.
Archana is a witness to her community's ways, and she's not keeping quiet about it. In 2019, she got an incredible opportunity to amplify her fight. She happened to attend a convention in Delhi organized by the United Nations Framework on Climate Change.
They have the youth group, and when I met them and when I participated in that event, I realized that there was no indigenous representation from Central India. When I said the issues in terms of land, forest and desertification, it connected with a lot of my friends from Latin America, the indigenous communities. And a lot of them came and appreciated me, saying that we feel the same way and our fight is also the same. And then also I realized there's a huge gap of perspective.
She joined the youth group and tried to address that balance. But, and this is where things really escalate, she couldn't have imagined what would happen then. In a year's time, she would go from being the young woman who wanted to be her community's advocate to someone with a role on the global stage. In 2020, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres created a youth advisory group on climate change. He needed the perspective of the younger generation and reached out to youth groups within the UN across the world. Each group nominated members, and Archana's group nominated her. There are just 7 people in this prestigious group. Archana represents Asia.
Our objective of this group is to advise Secretary General on climate crisis and climate solution. We are kind of a bridge between the young people and Secretary General. So our objective first is to reach out to different youth groups, meet with them, interact with them, get their perspective in terms of climate crisis and solutions. It's also getting nuanced perspective from different young people, stakeholders across the globe, and then present it to Secretary General and push to implement those.
It's a huge responsibility, and Archana has fully immersed herself in it. I mean, think about it. She has to not just look at communities within India, but across all of Asia, and then bring it back to the UN. Part of her brief is to persuade leaders from across the globe to listen to the perspectives of young people on climate change.
Young people will be impacted by climate crisis and are being impacted by climate crisis. We need to be part of this process. We cannot let elders decide our fate, which we have seen they have not yet done those strongly.
Archana is also looking for accountability from countries across the world on whether they are allocating enough resources for the fight against climate change. It is a staggering ambition for a young woman who wanted her community's perspective to be heard. The group she works with in the UN is still fairly new, and they've been doing work amidst a global pandemic. But Archana says she's optimistic about what can be achieved.
I think because of the level of activism and level of engagement by the young people, we are slowly and gradually being heard. But I also feel there's a lot more needs to be done rather than just hearing, implementing. People often see young people as mere young people. I think it's really important to also see that young people are professionals and engage them in different activities where these can be done, whether in this field of science, whether in the field of arts, to engage them in action. Because young people, we are not just demanding, we are also offering to work together.
Archana was also at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in November 2022 in Cairo, an event where countries come together to deliberate what they need to do to combat climate change. Luckily for Archana, most of the time, her work at the UN also overlaps with what she's learned on the field in Odisha, talking to elders in her community. Archana feels, as far as she's concerned, that there's no one better than her community to guide her in her fight against climate change. Before we ended our conversation, I asked Archana if she ever thinks about what her father would have to say, looking at all that she's achieved today.
I think he would say that I'm proud of you. Of late, I have been reflecting on this a lot. Like, I always feel that it would be so nice to have him here today, watch me in all of the spaces, because he was a good orator. I think he would say that I'm proud of you for not giving up on a lot of things, because I think it was not easy to choose this space, because I think it was one of those less taken road where you don't have reference of how to walk around.
While it's clear that Archana is walking her own path today, she hasn't forgotten to take on the knowledge passed down from her elders or the voice of her father. We thought it would be lovely to end the episode with a song that Archana Sarang sang in the studio with us.
Kanan kanan kudu ki oral sa kamte mai ighai sundar re oral sa kamte mai ighai sundar ani chanani dhiram dhiro.
This is an Odia song that Archana learned from her grandmother. In fact, it's the very first song she learned from her. I'll tell you its meaning. Let's go slowly, let's go together, to pluck the vegetables in the field. Let's go slowly, let's go together. Oh, the fields look so beautiful. Let's go slowly, let's go together.
Dhiram dhiro.
In the next episode of Kalki Presents My Indian Life, Siddharth Agarwal went on a bicycle journey from the east to the west of India, but felt it was still a little too fast. So what's slower than cycling? Walking. And why walk on roads when you can walk along India's rivers? Meet the river walker.
Even if all of my work, all my life's work, is able to transform one person's life, I am more than happy. Because it's transformed their lives and mine.
Kalki Presents My Indian Life is an All Things Small production for the BBC World Service. If you like this podcast, please hit the follow or subscribe button on your podcast app. You can find us on BBC World Service on Twitter and Facebook, or use the hashtag MyIndianLife with your comments and suggestions. Thank you for listening. This season of Kalki Presents My Indian Life has been researched, scripted, and produced by Archana Nathan. Gaurav Vaz is our executive producer. Our audio producer is Sachi Rajadhyaksh, with editing support by Nikhil Rao. The podcast was mixed and mastered by Ayan De.